Good evening all and welcome. Tonight I have a chilling collection of haunted hotel and Airbnb stories for you to enjoy. But before, just one quick announcement. We are having the 12 Days of Creepmas. I don't think I've done this in about 9 years, so I hope you all enjoy. You get one new video every day for the next 12 days, so do enjoy. And finally, all during the 12 Days of Creepmas, I have a special sale over on Patreon. If you type in the code GHOST, G-H-O-S-T, over on Patreon, you get 70% off. It's the biggest sale I've ever done and probably ever will do, so if you want it, you know where to go. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. My name is Lee. I'm 26 now, and this happened not too long ago, back when I was still married to my ex-husband called Joe. It was July of 2023, and I was 6 months pregnant with our first child. Life was stressful. Joe planned a baby moon for us and a quiet weekend in Chicago. He insisted on handling everything himself. My only job was to pack a bag and follow along. He booked us a room at a place called The Drake. It was one of those grand old hotels, just dripping with history. Our room was beautiful. We spent the whole first day wandering the city, grabbing dinner, walking off the nerves of becoming new parents, and later that night, I crashed harder than I ever thought I had in the hotel. Usually I toss and turn, but honestly the walking knocked me out cold. When morning came, I noticed Joe was already awake, sitting upright in the chair across from the bed. He wasn't scrolling on his phone or watching TV. He was just staring at the floor, which, as you can imagine, was pretty odd. "How'd you sleep?" I asked. He stayed quiet for a little while, and then, in a low voice, he finally answered, Something happened last night. Something weird." "What do you mean?" "A woman in a red dress walked into our room. She told me to go to the 10th floor." He didn't laugh or smirk. Didn't sound like he was joking. His face was pale. I brushed it off, teasing him lightly that maybe it was a dream or a shadow or his mind wandering. I even joked that if the woman in red was visiting him, maybe she looked like me. But he didn't smile, and something about the way he avoided looking at the door made the room feel even spookier. We had a whole day planned, breakfast downstairs, sightseeing, dinner reservations, so I didn't dwell on it. But when we got to breakfast, curiosity got the best of me. I pulled out my phone and typed, "The Drake, woman in red dress." I expected ghost tours or some haunted history blogs, but I didn't expect that the top result was this story. A young woman in a crimson dress celebrated New Year's Eve in 1920, newly engaged, beautiful and hopeful, standing among chandeliers and champagne glasses, until she found her fiancé cheating on her at the same gala. Heartbroken, she climbed to the 10th floor and jumped, plummeting to her doom. I felt the color drain out my face. I showed Joe the article immediately and he went rigid, like he recognized her, and neither of us said much after that. There was this suffocating feeling that followed us through the rest of the weekend, and honestly, I barely slept. And here's the part that still twists my stomach. Could it have been our room where she stayed? Where she took her last breaths alive? And where she is condemned to keep reliving that same event? I don't know. I worked at the Green Park Inn in Blowing Rock, North Carolina for 3 years during college. The place was old. The inn has been demolished now, condos are going up in its place, but sometimes I still wonder, what happens to the ghosts when the place that held them is torn down? Do they leave? Do they stay? Or just wait until someone gives them more again? I never used to ask questions like this. Not until the night I learned why the hallway near the old addition always felt chillier than the rest of the hotel. Let me take you back. It's story time, kids, gather round. Closing the restaurant at 2 in the morning was normal. I'd walk the long, narrow hallway from the old wing to the back lot where I parked. The overhead bulbs were always dim, and I never saw another person walk back there at that hour. One night after locking up, I heard footsteps behind me. Not heavy ones, nor adult ones, but children's ones, soft, rapid patters. I stopped walking and the footsteps didn't. They sped up, quick little bursts like kids racing down the hallway, and they were coming straight towards me. I could see the corridor clearly enough to know I was alone, but the sound kept advancing. And right before they reached me, something in the air changed. It moved like something swept past me, cool and sudden, brushing against my legs. Then the temperature dropped so sharply my skin prickled. It was without a doubt the unmistakable feeling of something unseen passing through the same space I occupied. The footsteps rushed past me towards the exit door. And then, just as quickly as they came, the sound faded out. I stood there in the half-light, frozen. Then I turned around and walked, fast, back towards the main lobby, refusing to use that hallway's exit again. I took the long way to the car that night, and every night after. The next day I told the front desk lady what happened. She'd worked there most of her life and didn't laugh or question it. She just kinda nodded. She told me long before my time. Before the hotel even expanded, there used to be a well, right where the hallway's end door now stood. 2 children fell in, and they didn't make it out. She said other employees had heard them too, running and playing or trying to get someone's attention long after the well was filled in and the hallway built over it. After that, I never set foot near the back exit again. The Green Park Inn is gone now, raised to make room for the new condos. It's sad, honestly. Haunted or not, nothing in the hotel ever felt evil, just unsettling. The building might be gone, but I wonder if the souls of those children are still around or not. I'm not trying to brag, but I've stayed in a lot of places that should have been haunted. An antebellum plantation, a former monastery in France, a 17th century palace amongst others. But nothing strange ever happened. That changed in November of 2024. My girlfriend and I took an overnight flight to London for a little end-of-year romantic escape. Now, I wouldn't describe Soho as romantic, neither would I, unless you're charmed by revelers urinating in the street, but I had a surprise. A historic hotel that looked straight out of a period drama. In a drizzle, we came to a dignified Georgian townhouse, its brickwork streaked by centuries of soot, and a discreet sign reading, Hazilts, built 1718. This was it. The door buzzed us through, and the 21st century evaporated. Wood floors, warmed by forgotten feet, sloped unexpectedly and pulling us inside. Everything was antique, with only a computer and the staff's clothing betraying the present. Drained from our transatlantic flight, we decided to nap for a few hours to recharge before going out to the pubs. Our room key simply read, Sir William Ross. A time-worn staircase groaned with each ascending step, until we found a door with the same name. The lock clanked, the door creaked, and the floor squeaked as we stepped into a small, Gothic vestibule, through another bickering old door, and into a fully panelled room with mouldings buried under centuries of thick, globby paint. The weak autumn sun, obscured by clouds and heavy silk, struggled to let light into the room, so I switched on the lamp. The bedroom was cramped but well appointed with various antiques. Above our fireplace, hung an unsettling painting of a frowning old man who seemed to judge us in perpetual disapproval. Our tall windows faced into the light well, which made the room eerily quiet for central London. My girlfriend undressed and climbed into the heavy oak bed, where she seemed to fall asleep almost instantly. I lingered next to the bathroom sink, brushing my teeth and taking in the historic details, when something in the bedroom caught my eye. At first, I thought I was looking at an oil portrait, one I hadn't initially noticed, but then I realized it didn't have a frame nor canvas. It was a man, maybe around 30, straightening himself as though he had set something on the floor. He was standing near the corner of our bed, looking down at my sleeping girlfriend. He wore a dark jacket and had wavy, medium-length brown hair that parted to the left. He didn't seem malicious, just mildly curious or quietly observant, as though he just walked into the room and didn't expect to see someone sleeping there. Our door was locked, so I assumed a hotel worker had mistakenly entered. I was about to tell him the room was occupied, but then I realized it would have been impossible for him to have entered the room in absolute silence. That's when I noticed his clothes and hairstyle again. The lapels on his coat were dramatically overlarge, and his parted hair had a carelessness that felt rebellious yet youthful, just not of this century. The reason I initially mistook him for a painting was because he looked like a character from a Jane Austen movie. I still didn't understand what I was seeing. A strange vibration began building in my spine, as if I were gripping an electric fence. I'd always heard stories of hotel ghosts appearing in the middle of the night, but not in the afternoon, nor visiting almost as soon as you check in. He was not transparent, nor was he floating or glowing or a mist. He just looked like a regular old man in our room. He didn't say anything, and I never saw him look at me, only at my sleeping girlfriend. Still, standing only 15 feet away, with a wide open doorway between us, I felt an intense sense of vulnerability, as if there were a hot, invisible spotlight on me. I had no doubt this person was dead. Growing up, my parents had only ever lived in historic homes. It had been years, but I knew this feeling. I don't like to acknowledge these type of things, as I think it encourages them to interact with you even more. So I pretended I didn't see him and turned back into the sink. Brushing again, I ran the water and began to unnecessarily and clumsily jostle our toiletries around, making some sort of noise. I rinsed my mouth and turned back to the bedroom, but he was gone. According to the law, the hotel is haunted by the ghost of William Hazlitt, a writer who died in the building and who the hotel is named for. Later, I found a portrait of Hazlitt. His hairstyle was a little different, but everything else plausibly matched. I stepped back into the bedroom with a more intense feeling of being watched. My girlfriend was fast asleep and nothing was missing. I was obviously spooked, but I slid into bed and told myself that I was just tired from the long flight and seeing things. Despite my unease, I fell asleep, and the rest of our trip was amazing. But privately, I was unnerved. I didn't want to scare her, so I waited until the flight home to share my story. She was disturbed, but hadn't seen anything strange herself. We talked through the possibilities. Was he a hotel worker? If so, why not knock and announce himself? He would have definitely seen us while in the vestibule prior to entering the room. Perhaps a lost guest, but our door was locked. A hallucination from sleep deprivation? I'd slept on the plane and I don't hallucinate, and just because I'm a little tired doesn't mean I will. Maybe I didn't hear him over the sound of brushing my teeth. The hotel was so ancient and creaky, I'm certain I would have heard something. Then I realized I never checked under the bed, so I cannot rule out that someone was patiently hiding there, and to be honest, that might be the most frightening explanation of them all. I was watching 1408 tonight, and the second the opening credits rolled, my brain snapped right back into my stay at the Congress Hotel in Chicago, the most haunted hotel in the city, though I didn't know that at the time. This was Christmas 2023. I'd grown up visiting Chicago pretty often since I'm from southeastern Wisconsin, so the city has always felt familiar, but I've never really dug into its darker stories. My partner was visiting me in the US for his first American Christmas. He's from overseas, so I wanted to give him the full Chicago holiday vibe. My mum surprised us with 2 nights at the Congress as a Christmas gift. From the pictures online, it looked old-fashioned and classy. We should have trusted our gut the moment we stepped inside, though. The lobby itself was beautiful. Marble floors, towering ceilings, and ornate vintage details. But underneath that, there was something chilling in the air that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Like walking into a room right after someone has been arguing. My partner looked at me, and without saying a thing, we both just knew that something was off. We checked into room 436. The elevator felt like it crawled up the floors, whining, almost like it didn't want us to make it to our destination. And when the doors opened onto our floor, both of us said, out loud and at the same time, "What in the hell?" It was like stepping straight into The Shining. A white leather lounge couch sat in the middle of the hallway for no reason, its surface stained with old smoke marks and age. The carpet was faded and oddly squishy underfoot, stretching down endless corridors like a maze. The ceiling above us was literally crumbling in places. Lights flickered in a slow, rhythmic way. The whole area looked like a set piece from the mid-80s. And the hallways, Jesus, they just kept on going. All identical. It felt like real-life backrooms. But the day itself was great. We shoved the strangeness to the back of our minds, explored the city, ate great food, laughed and shopped, and it wasn't until the evening that things started to go sideways. We ordered Wingstop, put on a movie, and eventually knocked out. Sometime deep in the night, I woke up from my food coma, disoriented, and noticed the bathroom light was on. I was sure we'd turned it off. It creeped me out enough that I got up, opened the bathroom door fully, and left the light on to serve as a nightlight. The next time I woke up, it was off again. And standing in front of the bathroom, blocking out the faint glow of the city lights, was the pitch black silhouette of a woman. Not a blur nor a trick of the eyes, a solid black figure, with no features, no face, no light passing through, just a tall shadow standing as still as a stone. Growing up in the Midwest, you're basically taught to ignore stuff like that. Spirits and ghosts, mind your own business and go back to sleep. And that's exactly what I did. I was tired, just too spooked from the hallway. Maybe I was imagining it after all. In the morning, I asked my partner if he'd gone to the bathroom and if them turning the light off and on was deliberate. He said no, but he had heard slow, deliberate knocking on the door in the middle of the night. He put his ear to the door to check if it was coming from another room, and he said the knocking was right there on our door. When I looked through the peephole that morning, that horrible, endless hallway stared right back at me. We joked about accidentally booking a haunted hotel, tried to brush it off, and went to Chinatown and had a great day. But back in the Uber ride, everything changed. Our driver was local, super chatty and friendly, and mid-sentence he suddenly goes, "Oh, you're staying at the Congress Plaza?" Yeah, I'd never stay there. My partner and I burst out laughing and told him how the place basically catfished us. He went on to say, "Well, you know it's the most haunted hotel in Chicago, right? Have you heard about room 441? I told him about the shadow woman, and without missing a beat he said, "Oh yeah, that's probably the maid. She does that." I swear both of us went silent and just stared at him. What do you mean she does that? When we got back inside, we immediately started wandering the hallway, trying to find room 441. And we found a sealed-off door, completely blocked with no handle. Past that blocked room, tucked into a corner, was another dark room with its door left cracked open, and I called out, "Hello?" I peeked inside, stupid I know, when the room was pitch black, with the window fully open, and our window had been basically sealed shut. Both of us had tried to open it earlier but couldn't even make it budge. Later that night, as we were trying to unwind, things escalated. Around midnight, we began hearing kids running up and down the hallway, little footsteps, giggling, the sound of shoes slapping the carpet as they got closer. Every time we opened the door, the hallway would be empty. Every single time. We were on that floor for 2 nights, and the only people we ever saw were an elderly couple from 10 doors down, dead quiet. My mum's gift had basically put us in an overflow floor that felt abandoned by the living, and that night we slept with every light on. It didn't matter though. I still woke up to the bathroom light being mysteriously on and off and on again. It was honestly the worst night's sleep of my life. After the trip, I finally looked up the stories about the maid, the woman who walks out the bathroom, the noises, the cold spots, the sealed room, and everything matched. Moral of the story, always check a hotel before booking it, especially if it's for your family. I was on a road trip with my husband in September of 2019, and after a long day of driving we were tired. We stopped in Galena, Illinois, a town that looks like it's been preserved in a Confederate snow globe, so we decided to spend the night. It was a Wednesday, and we figured we'd find a cheap room without much trouble. I walked into the DeSoto House Hotel. It looked like a Civil War reenactment, married to a bed and breakfast. I asked about a room, and the front desk clerk quoted me $300 for the night. I politely declined and went back to the car to check other options on my phone. I found out everything nearby was either fully booked or somehow even more expensive. I went back in and asked if they had any drop-in discounts. She said that she can get me a room for $150, but that it's in the haunted part of the hotel. I laughed, but she didn't, and seemed concerned. I took the deal. She even threw in a $50 dining credit. It was like stumbling onto a spooky Groupon. I was excited. We ate dinner, made a few ghost jokes over wine, it was great. And after dinner, we decided to take a walk around town. There was a full moon, the town was empty, and it was kind of magical. Until it wasn't. We both got this weird sense that something was following us, and I kept seeing these flashes of bright white light in my peripheral vision, like something ducking around corners with a flashlight. But every time I looked, of course, there'd be nothing there. The town was completely empty. I got spooked and suggested we head back. The room was outdated. Like a haunted Victorian dollhouse meets the 1982 Holiday Inn. Old carpet, pink floral wallpaper, and the furniture was a mixture of vintage and the kind of stuff you'd see on the street on garbage pickup day. A few hours into my sleep, my husband shook me awake, and then he asked, "Why are you playing music?" But I didn't hear anything. He looked around like he couldn't figure out if he dreamt it. But the weird part is he's half deaf. The man can't hear me when I'm standing right next to him, and that was a red flag. But I shrugged it off and went back to sleep. Until I woke up to the feeling of something tickling my ribs, saying, "Goochie goochie goo." It didn't sound like it wanted to hurt me, but it frightened me. It was a whisper, but the creepy pedo energy was beyond. I sat straight up and yelled, "What the hell, Patrick?" At first, I thought it had to be my husband, right? But when I turned to yell at him, he was asleep, turned away from me, and I seemed to have just startled him out of sleep. I somehow managed to convince myself it was just a dream. I had freaked myself out with all the ghost stories, or maybe my husband had done some half-conscious prank. After that, I refused to set foot off the bed for the rest of the night. I had my feet tucked in, like the floor was lava, and a demon was waiting to drag me under. Eventually, I fell back asleep. The next morning we both felt completely drained, like we'd been out partying all night instead of sleeping nearly 9 hours. We left the hotel first thing in the morning and started swapping stories in the car. That's when my husband told me he got up to pee during the night. He looked in the mirror and saw someone standing behind him. I told him again that I was convinced he had tickled me, and he swore on our children's lives that he didn't. He said that he would never tickle me because I kick like a mule and he values his life. At this point, I started going through the photos I'd taken the night before. That's when things got even stranger. Some of the pictures were completely blank, just solid white screens. Others had orbs, weird motion, streaks, shadows that made no sense. I've taken thousands of photos on my iPhone, and this has never happened before. And when I started Googling the hotel, turns out people on the 3rd floor where we stayed often report hearing classical music at night. Apparently there used to be a ballroom on the 4th floor before it was destroyed in a fire over a century ago. Long story short, I saved $150 and got a $50 dining credit in exchange for hearing ghostly music, seeing flashes of light, some weird pictures, and being violated by something. Next time I'll sleep in the car with the lights on, with holy water and sage in the cup holder. This past summer, my girlfriend and I joined my family for a week-long vacation in Cape Cod. If you've ever been there, you know how the place feels. Dense woods, narrow roads, houses tucked so tightly into the trees you can drive right past one without noticing, which is what we did. It's beautiful, but isolating. We almost missed our Airbnb entirely, as I said. It was an old 1800s family home with a new addition sitting behind a small gravel driveway. Inside, the newer half of the house had bedrooms, bathrooms, a kitchen, and a big sunroom overlooking the fenced backyard. The original 1800s portion had 2 bedrooms, a sitting area, and its own bathroom. The backyard was perfect. Big tree, patio, fire pit, and plenty of room for our dog to run. Since we were the first ones to arrive, my girlfriend and I picked rooms for everyone. We aired the place out, opened the windows, and settled in. At night, we left the windows cracked open for the cool breeze. And that's when the activity started. Around 9 p.m. on the first night, my brother and his girlfriend were in their rooms when he suddenly heard whispering outside their room. She didn't hear anything. It happened again the next night, and the next. It was always a whisper, always around the same time, and he was the only one who was ever able to hear it. He mentioned it once over breakfast, but none of us heard anything and honestly just brushed it off. Then came our second to last night. Almost 30 members of my family gathered at our place for a campfire. My brother and his girlfriend went on their usual walk, and a few minutes later she came sprinting into the backyard out of breath, saying my brother needed me. I followed her onto the main road where he was waiting. He pointed up the dark streets and said, "I found the guy who's been whispering." I squinted down the road. At first I saw nothing. Then something stepped briefly through one of the dim pools of light. A slow shuffling figure, pacing back and forth just past the neighbor's long driveway. I thought I'd imagined it, until the whispering started, faint but constant, and it was definitely coming from him. My brother wanted to confront the guy, but there was something in the way he moved. The slow, aimless, almost drifting way told me we shouldn't. The road was on a dead end into a patch of woods. He would have had to have walked past us eventually, and that thought alone made my skin crawl. We need to go." The 3 of us hurried back through the house and out to the section of fence that bordered the neighbor's driveway. We stayed there, eyes adjusting to the dark, waiting. My family, without knowing what was happening, was now telling ghost stories around the fire, completely unaware that we were standing 10 feet from whoever was out there. And then we saw him. A silhouette appeared in the driveway, shuffling back and forth, hood up, head down, whispering non-stop. He was so close I could make out the shape of his clothes, but not his face. No reaction to us, nor change in his pace, just the non-stop whispering. My brother and I clicked on our phone flashlights and aimed them straight for him. Any normal person would have jumped, reacted, looked over, but he didn't. he just kept whispering and shuffling, like the lights meant nothing to him. Someone behind me said, "Hello," but he didn't even flinch. At that point, the entire family put out the fire and filed into the house. My brother and I stayed long enough to watch him shuffle back into the darkness before locking every door and window, and honestly, no one slept well that night. We didn't see him again for the rest of the trip, but the feeling of him, of that whispering, stayed with us. I still don't know who he was or why he paced outside our house, night after night. But all that I know is that I heard him. This started around 2020. My dad worked at a restaurant/hotel called The Barn in Hockley Heath. It had a Premier Inn attached to it. Around the back of the building was a staff house for the workers who had nowhere to stay. This is how I met one of my friends. She used to sleep over to visit her dad at the same time as me. The staff house halls were creepy, and there used to be this laundry room that we'd all hang out in. All sorts of spooky stuff used to happen there. The lights would turn off on their own, we would hear creaking, and we would even hear a clown-like laughter once. In 2022, I got a part-time job there as a waiter. One night as we were closing up, I went into this long, narrow storage closet to grab some forks, and as I was walking back out, I walked into a little boy who would have been walking into the closet. I said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." It then clicked into my head he shouldn't be there, so I turned around to say something. But he was gone. There's only one exit through that closet, and I was standing in the way of it. There was a part of the restaurant where it was protected by some sort of spirit. I'll get to that later. The restaurant had burnt down twice. The section that survived both times was the only bit made from wood in that area, and a lady who was staying in the Premier Inn took her own life with a rope. Later in the year, I moved to a cleaner and receptionist position in the hotel. When you went to clean the room that the woman took her life in, anything you cleaned would be messed up again. Handprints on the mirrors, an imprint of a human on the bed, the water turning on. The restaurant closed down a few months ago due to some circumstances, but now it's just the Premier Inn. It's always left me wondering, that place. I got my first job at 18 at this supposedly high-end resort in Central Oregon, though honestly I never thought it was that fancy, but they had these strict rules like never approach celebrities or ask for autographs while in uniform, so I guess that alone said something about the place. At first, everything felt normal. There were 2 weeks of training, shadowing other housekeepers, and learning the insane cleaning standards. But even during training, I started having these weird nightmares set exactly in the suites I was cleaning. At first, it didn't freak me out too much, until the dreams started happening every single night. The layout of the suites was always the same. A cozy-looking sitting area downstairs with a TV and a couch, a full kitchen tucked off to the side, and a small dining table right between them. Then the stairs, what were those damn stairs, leading up to an open loft with a railing and a single bed or two doubles. It should have felt homey, but the longer I worked there, the more this setup honestly began to haunt me. Every time I stepped into one, I'd get a crawling feeling between my shoulder blades. Like someone just standing outside my field of vision. Perhaps you've felt that before. And sometimes there were people around me. Other housekeepers would grab the vacuum and would pop in early. Snowboarders would still be passed out upstairs, but the feeling didn't match the reality. For about a month, they kept assigning me to this cluster of suites called the Annex. It was basically the resort's no-man land. It was backed up right against the thick line of fir trees. That was where the nightmares got worse, and everything escalated. One day I was halfway through cleaning the Annex suite when an electrical storm rolled in. Thunder cracked so loud the windows rattled, and with every flash the whole room filled with this unbearable tension. It was like something had crawled into the suite with me. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I couldn't even pretend to be okay. I ended up sitting on the bed for at least 10 minutes waiting for that feeling to lift. My lead later asked why I'd been clocked into that room so long. I lied and said the place was trashed from snowboarders partying, which is totally believable given the usual state those rooms were left in. She just told me to next time call her for backup. It got so bad I started dreading the upstairs landing. Vacuuming up there meant turning my back to the stairs and not being able to hear anything over the vacuum's roar. Every time I felt like something was creeping up behind me. More than once I nearly jumped out my skin when I caught sight of my lead walking below the landing. And this overwhelming relief flooded me because at least someone real was there with me. Eventually I found a small way to cope, turning the TV on while I cleaned, just to break the silence. But even with the noise, that crawling unease never went away. My nightmares during that time were intense and violent, always something demonic chasing either me or a family member through those exact suites. Or worse, dreams of my family slowly going insane from staying in those rooms. I started carpooling with a co-worker who lived in the same town as me, about 20 miles away from the resort. One morning she looked exhausted. She told me she'd had a nightmare about the suites, about the exact loft layout. She said she was climbing the stairs, and when she reached the top, she saw something in the far corner. Its whole body was swallowed by shadow, and she could hear a weird clicking sound. It was taking Polaroid photos of itself, and they were floating by its feet. In the dream, she picked one up, and she wished she hadn't. She told me she saw its face, pale, sagging skin, sunken empty eyes, a mouth that looked too wide. She described it as demonic. I swear the way she told it made my stomach drop. I could imagine every second of it, as it matched some of the dreams that I had had. I quit about 4 months in, not just because of the nightmares or the feelings of being watched, but it definitely pushed me out the door faster. Housekeeping was tedious, and constantly cleaning up after strangers got old. The pay was good and the tips were great when guests were kind, but no amount of money ever made it worth it for how I was feeling. This happened a few years ago when I went to Mexico in a city called Querétaro, in the historic downtown area. Me and two of my closest friends, Montse and Paula, went on a weekend trip. We booked a small hotel, nothing fancy, but it looked decent online. The old colonial-style building, which is normal in the center, was kind of charming during the day, but weird at night. The guy at the front desk gave us an actual metal key, not a key card, and told us we would be staying in room 217. He didn't say much else, just handed it over with this look, like he didn't want to say much more. We got to the room and felt uncomfortable immediately. It was quiet, way too quiet. Have you ever walked into a place that feels like it's been shut for way too long? That kind of quiet. The room had 3 little beds, a bedroom that looked like it hadn't been updated in 50 years, and this huge wardrobe in the corner that honestly creeped me out from the start. We were tired from traveling, so we went out, explored the city, came back late, and just crashed. Then around 2 in the morning we start hearing stuff. At first it sounds like running water. I thought one of my friends was using the sink in the bathroom, but I looked over. They were both still in bed. The faucet would turn on, run for a few seconds and then stop. Then it would start again, like someone was just playing with it. So I got up and checked the bathroom. No water running. The sink was dry, the knobs weren't loose, nothing. I stood there for a second just listening, but there was nothing, it stopped. I went back to bed. Maybe 10 minutes later we heard a sound creak from the wardrobe. Not like it was settling or something, it sounded like something moved inside of it. None of us said anything. I think we were trying to ignore it, hoping the others would fall asleep first. But we all just lay there awake, staring at the ceiling with the lights still on. That night I heard what I swear were footsteps outside the door, not fast, just slow, dragging steps going back and forth. Paula said she heard something breathing near her bed, but when she turned to look, nothing was there. Monse said she heard whispering like a child almost coming from the bathroom. The three of us didn't sleep at all, but the worst part was in the morning. I went into the bathroom to wash my face and the mirror was fogged up, thick, like someone had taken a hot shower but we hadn't used it yet. It felt like something had been there all night, watching us. We didn't say a word to each other, packed up, went downstairs and checked out. And a few weeks later, just out of curiosity, I looked the place up online, and there were some reviews saying the hotel must be haunted. For some context, I am a 25-year-old male, and this happened to me when I was around 13. It's been a long time, but my family and I still talk about it to this day, as it involved all of us. And while we still talk about it, I unfortunately have a hard time remembering the exact details, and some parts of it due to head trauma. So that means that some of the finer details I can't remember right now, but I know this happened sometime during the year 2012. I think it happened on our way from Washington to Oklahoma. We had made this trip several times, but I cannot remember if it was on our way to or from Washington, but basically, we had been on the road all day. It was night, the sun had already set, and everyone was tired. We had 2 cars to fit everything. Me, my sister, and my mum rode in the SUV, while my brother and his girlfriend, at the time now wife, rode in the small 4-door car. We had been on a long stretch of road surrounded by pine trees on both sides. The GPS said we wouldn't be reaching another town for a good few miles, but there were lights just down the road. We thought maybe the GPS needed to be updated or something because all the small towns tended not to show up at the time. I don't remember the name of the brand we had. It was the kind you just stuck to the car window, plugged it into your car and entered the address and picked your route. We usually took the same one every time, depending on the time of year. Now, I don't remember which route we took specifically, but we knew the route by this point, and we didn't expect to be in this specific town. We came closer, and my brother called my mum, and the conversation went something along the lines of him saying he was getting tired and his girlfriend was already asleep, so she shouldn't drive. My mum agreed that she was tired too, and for once, it might be sensible to pull over and find a hotel in this town. He agreed, and he slowed down to get behind us so he could follow us to pull over. At this point, everything seemed fine, and nothing was out of the ordinary. It wasn't until we passed the sign with the name of the town that my gut twisted. I remember watching as we neared the town, and there was just an inkling of a feeling that I didn't understand yet. Everything seemed fine, but I kept watching my surroundings as we drove. The light had a sickly yellow or orange hue to it. I remember looking at the sign as we passed, but I can't remember the name of the town, and the funny thing, no one else could. Yet we wrote it down that night, and the day after, so we wouldn't come through it again. Anyway, we passed the sign and my gut dropped. At the time I didn't understand what I was feeling was anxiety. I just remember thinking we were being watched. But looking around there was no one. While yes, it was the middle of the night, so people were probably asleep. There were no cars, the buildings were empty, and the air itself was stagnant as we drove through it. Now, I know Kid Me had a very active imagination, but my older brother can confirm the town was empty in a way that scared even him. We saw a church sitting on a small hill just to the right side of town, and we drove up to it. We parked near the door, as it was the only light in the gravel parking lot. Also, this was the only light that was white and didn't have a sick hue to it. We all stepped out the cars to stretch our legs and find a hotel. My mum told me and my sister, who was about 9 to 10 at the time, to stay close, slipping in the fact that she had this creepy feeling as well. At the time, I dismissed the small statement and just walked around the car to move my legs. when something moved behind the big dumpster that's across the parking lot. The light on the door didn't reach all the way out to the dumpster. I could barely see its outline enough to know it even was a dumpster. But something scattered along the gravel as if darting behind it. My mum heard this and ordered me and my sister to get into the car. I stood staring for a moment before walking backwards to the car. For whatever reason, it didn't feel like turning its back to me. We waited in the car as my brother had his girlfriend get in the car and walk my mum to the SUV and help her put the address in for the GPS. Once it was set, he got in the car and we drove off. I couldn't get myself to look back at the dumpster as we drove away. We drove through town, and again everything seemed eerily empty and clean. There was no litter or trash, nothing that suggested life besides the streetlights that we were on. We headed to the edge of town, following the GPS, and turned onto this gravel road that led down a giant, open lot, surrounded by thick, dense woods. In said lot was the motel. And I don't mean the fancy hotel and motels now. No, this was a 2-story L-shaped building with about 30 rooms, and the check-in was a separate small building to the side of the hotel rooms. It only had one light in the parking lot, besides the small ones above the doors. The light was a hollow white. We pulled in, and my mum called my brother and said to stay in the car, and that she was going to go and speak with whomever was inside. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. The building was small, but the windows were big, so we could see inside enough to watch our mother go in and talk to the guy at the counter. But here's the thing. Me, my sister, and my brother all saw different things. When my mother went in, I saw her speak to a man who had a thin, frail stature and a permanent scowl. He seemed old and weary and miserable. His eyes were slightly sunken in, his skin slightly pale and hanging slightly. My sister says she saw a young man who seemed nervous and annoyed, dark hair and deep eyes. My brother says he saw a middle-aged man who was aloof and uncaring, who had a beard and dark hair. I can't remember all the details they gave me, but I knew the main differences. When our mother came out, she got into the car and waved for my brother to follow. We had gotten side-by-side rooms and parked in front of them. We were told only to bring in the essentials for the night because she didn't want to stay longer than necessary in the morning. We all agreed, grabbed what little we needed and headed into our rooms. My sister and mother and I stayed in the right room while my brother and his girlfriend stayed in the left. My sister had asked to take a shower, and of course our mother went to help get it ready. As my sister wasn't sure how this one worked, well, it turns out it didn't. The water wouldn't turn on. So she called my brother and explained, and of course he came to get her, so she could shower in theirs. While they went to do that, my mum looked at the beds, realizing I'm staring at them, and she goes, "You don't want to touch them either, do you?" And hearing I wasn't alone in this feeling, I smiled and shook my head. I said, "It feels gross," and she said it did. She went to check the beds, and when my brother came running back to our room, he opened the door frantically, and of course, it startled us. He said to pack our things and asked my mum to come with him. She nodded and followed him and began putting stuff back in the bag. My sister came over and she looked freaked out. I remember offering to help her pack and asking what happened, and at first she had a hard time trying to say it, but finally got it out that there was blood in the shower when they went in. She freaked out and had Caleb check it, and when he came to get our mum, she came back and calmly said to put our things into the truck and get in. At that point, it really hit now how bad this place was. I began to panic and hurried to put our stuff in the car. We got in, and no one wasted any time in driving away. We turned to continue going through the town onto the one we knew about, and unfortunately my brother needed gas. Luckily, as we got to the edge of the town, like the rest of it was in our rearview mirror, there was a gas station. My brother pulled over to the pump, my mum pulled to the one next to it, and we all just waited together while he pumped gas. We all jumped out, went inside after my brother was done, And at this point we were all wide awake, so we grabbed a drink, a snack, paid for gas, and that went fine until we went back outside. We were heading back to the cars. My brother's girlfriend was already in the car, and I was walking next to him. I don't remember what we were talking about, but we were laughing. I'm standing next to him as he's putting the thing back in the pump, and something moves across the parking lot. Both of our heads shoot up, and we're staring at a shed in the back corner and a tall, intimidating tree behind it. All of a sudden, two figures dart and run behind the shed. My brother slowly closes his gas tank without taking his eyes off the shed, and he says to get in the car. As soon as he says it, 3 pairs of glowing amber eyes stare back at us from beside the shed, yet somehow taller than the shed. He books it to the front seat of his car as I jump into the truck, and he speeds off, my mum following after him. My mum is asking what happened because she didn't see that part, but luckily my sister also had seen it. We began to share with her what had happened, and she called my brother, who confirmed the story. We all agreed to never come through here again. After this, we drove to the next town and found a Holiday Inn and went there instead. We spent the next hour, I think, just kind of talking about what happened until we were calm enough to sleep. The next day I remember us trying to look up the town we'd gone through the night before. But that's the thing. We couldn't find anything. We thought maybe it just wasn't a well-known town, so we got older maps and even asked people that worked there about this town a few miles away, and none of them had ever even heard of it. Since then, it has us all dumbfounded about it. Now, there's no point trying to find it when we can't remember the name of it, but it's still a deep-rooted memory that we all talk about it. It's not often, but still, it's like something we can't forget no matter how hard we try. My family and I had a weird night at the Wolf Lodge, and I wanted to check if anyone else has. We stayed here 3 times before with no problems, ever. But this was the first time that anything like this ever happened to us. We stayed in a suite room, and it has 2 conjoining rooms with 2 doors where you can lock the room from either side. The kids stayed in the kids-style room with kids' bunk beds, and we stayed in the non-kids side room. We kept the doors open for both sides, and I made sure the doors for both rooms were fully locked, including the lock where you can't fully open the door from the outside. At midnight, my son of 6 ran into our room half awake next to our bed and was crying half asleep sitting up right next to us. I asked him if he had a bad dream, and he said no, that he saw something really scary in the room. It was a big kid with a dark shadow walking around, and it ran right past him to get here, he said. I knew I checked the room before we went to sleep and figured it was his imagination, and we went back to sleep. Then at 3 a.m, my wife sat up frantically looking around, and I asked her what was the matter. She said someone yelled, "Mum," and went on to say, "You honestly didn't hear that?" I told her no, I hadn't seen it, and she asked me to go check on our daughter. I got to the kids' bunk bed den in the next room and found her out of bed, bundled up in the corner, hyperventilating and crying. I swooped her up, and she started saying to be careful, that he's still in here. I ran her back to our room and laid her on our bed with my wife and started searching the whole house. I turned on all the lights and checked literally everywhere, and there was no one. The doors were untouched, locks still in place, and windows unable to open. Honestly, I was feeling the walls and mirrors looking for hidden doors. I asked my daughter what she saw, and she said she was laying on the top bunk and thought at first it was me walking towards their bunk bed. But as I got closer, she realized it wasn't. She said this person was taller and skinnier than me. It also had smooth white skin and a neck longer than a normal person. Its skin paper white, smooth, and looked naked but not at the same time, and it didn't appear to have facial features. I asked if maybe it was a blanket, and she said no, its skin was smooth, without wrinkles, and it walked straight up to her, and she covered herself. Then she watched it walk away towards the door, where our bedroom was. She came down the bunk when it walked away, and peeked out the den window but saw it still walking towards our bedroom. So she hid in the corner and tried to stay quiet so it wouldn't hear her, but began to panic. My wife asked our daughter if she was trying to be quiet. Why did she yell at Mum? Our daughter said she never said anything because she didn't want it to hear. I didn't even hear our daughter say anything besides her hyperventilation as I got close to the bunk beds. I told my daughter not to mention what she had seen to our son ever after he told us what he saw when he woke up. I know he could be spooked if he found his sister had had a similar encounter a few hours after him. Both of our kids have consistently slept in their own rooms since they were little and have never ran into our room in the middle of the night unless our son had a rare bathroom accident. At this point we figured the kids' room was sketchy, so we slept them with us and closed and locked the room for the night. It took an hour for my wife to fall back asleep. I was honestly spooked by the whole thing, so I left the hallway light on and figured I'd just keep watch and stay awake till daylight. After she fell back asleep, the closet light I left on turned off and wouldn't let me turn it on, so I turned on the bathroom light instead. A little later, I heard a loud knocking noise on the conjoining room door, which I had locked. I honestly got goosebumps and tried to convince myself it was coming from the front door, but knew it was coming from the conjoining door and debated whether to ignore it or not. I felt vulnerable laying down without checking, so I went and checked, but there was nothing. Half an hour later, my wife, still asleep, began freaking out in her sleep. She appeared to be having a night terror, which she had had before, 1 to 2 years in the past. I woke her up and she was frantic. She stood up and said she dreamt she woke up from a dream in the same bed. She went to the bathroom in our room, came out, and ended up being stuck on the other room, locked with the evil entity. She said I had locked her in the other room, and she was knocking like crazy in her dream trying to get back in on our side before the entity got to her. Later in the morning, our son woke up, and when we asked him to describe what he saw, he said he saw what looked like the shape of a big, tall kid with a long neck, white or grey in colour, and a very big, scary shadow walking around the room. He said it was making weird noises like it was speaking words he didn't understand. He said it walked right up to him in bed and had big eyes that glowed like our cat's eyes in the dark. As the sun came out, we got the courage to go into the other room and grab our belongings to leave. The last weird thing is the room had a weird smell which wasn't present there the day prior. I personally didn't see anything, but I know what my children saw. I've never believed in ghosts, not once. Not even after friends swapped stories or after weird noises in the middle of the night. But tonight, literally minutes ago, something happened in my hotel room in Naha, Okinawa, and I can't shake the feeling that I walked straight into something. It's our last night on the island. Outside it's humid enough to choke on, so the AC on our room is blasting at full force, rattling softly above us while we half watched the TV and half dozed. That's when I heard something small dropping onto the floor behind us. I turned. A box of pain medication lay on the carpet, almost a meter away from the table it had been sitting on. I stared at it, waiting for the obvious explanation: wind, vibrations, someone brushing past it. But the AC vent wasn't angled towards the table, and no one had gone near that corner of the room. We tested it, again and again. The table had a chair tucked halfway underneath, and no matter how much we nudged, bumped, or smacked the box, it always fell straight onto the chair first. There was simply no way it could have cleared the chair, travelled that far, and landed where it did, unless it had been thrown. That was the only incident at the time, except one girl in our group mentioned she had bizarre dreams the night before, visions of fake angels delivering messages. None of us believed her, of course, we're all skeptics. Just to be sure, before bed, we set up a card upright against the pain medication box, perfectly aligned with the table's edge. A tiny experiment, so if something moved we'd know. But overnight nothing happened. But still, I'm confused and uneasy. Because this isn't the first time things have randomly fallen over or ended up in the wrong place when this group is together. 2 weeks ago, 2 small spoons on my chaotic desk, which had been nowhere near each other, somehow ended up arranged in a perfect cross. Another day, a painting came loose and crashed onto the floor. Something in the bathroom that should have never been in the bathroom fell loudly enough to startle the whole house. None of this started until we visited a sacred site at night, or until we climbed Fushimiri Inari in the dark, joking around like idiots about spirits and gods. We insist still that we're non-believers, it's easier that way. But the pain meds shouldn't have moved like that, and things shouldn't keep falling and objects shouldn't keep rearranging themselves into symbols. Strange, right? Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you have enjoyed tonight's collection of stories. If of course you did, you can let me know down below. It did feel a little bit weird including Airbnb stories. I didn't really have enough material to make it its own, so I just had to kind of marry the topics together. But there you go. Don't forget that if you would like to join me over on Patreon, you get 70% off. So, yeah, until the end of the 12th, midnight US time. Anyway, I'd like to give one final thank you to my amazing members and patrons whose names are on screen, and if you'd like to join their ranks, well, I've already said what you needed to do. You get some cool perks, as you probably already know. But that's it from me. Stay awesome, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.